This is the story of how corrupt political machine and a fame-hungry governor conspired to turn Billy the Kid, a teenage freedom fighter, by the way, into America's most wanted outlaw, using a carefully worded legal document designed to let killers walk free while putting a target on one young man's back. Hey folks, I'm Mr. V, and welcome back to The Hidden Lens. Today we're going back to the 1870s in New Mexico territory, and I promise you, what you learned about Billy the Kid in school, in the movies, and that Billy Joel song, almost all of it was planted propaganda, and I can prove it. Let's start with what everybody thinks, what everybody thinks they know. Billy the Kid, born killer, gunned down 21 men by the time he turned 21. A cold-blooded psychopath terrorizing the frontier. Wrong. Dead wrong. His real name was Henry McCarty, born 1859 in New York City. His mother dragged the family west looking for better opportunities, but she died of tuberculosis in 1874, leaving Henry an orphan at just 14 years old. A skinny, Spanish-speaking kid with no family. No money and no protection in the roughest territories in America. His first arrest was for stealing food. He was 16. Not exactly the resume of a born killer. Here's where the story gets twisted, literally twisted by powerful men who needed a villain. Running New Mexico territory in those days was a shadowy group called the Santa Fe Ring. And when I say shadowy, I mean these people have their fingers in every branch of territory government. The courts, the legislator, the law enforcement, the governor's office. They rigged elections, they stole land through fraudulent legal schemes, and they assassinated opponents. The ring's leader, Thomas Benton Catron, launched the whole operation back in 1866 as a land grab scheme with a fellow crooked attorney named Stephen Elkins. And get this, when New Mexico finally became a state in 1912, Catron was selected as one of its very first U.S. senators. That tells you everything about how deep this corruption ran. The ring's economic muscle on the ground came from a mercantile monopoly called the House, run by Lawrence Murphy and his partner James Dolan. If you were a rancher or a farmer in Lincoln County, you bought from the House, you borrowed from the House, and you paid whatever price the House set. It was a stranglehold. The ring backed it completely. On the other side of things, you had a British rancher named John Tunstall. He, his business partner Alexander McSween, and cattle baron John Chisum were trying to break that stranglehold on Lincoln County's economy. Chisum was one of the biggest cattlemen in the Southwest, and his backing gave Tunstall and McSween real financial muscle. Together, they set up a competing store and a bank directly challenging Murphy and Dolan. They hired young Henry McCarty, Billy, as a ranch hand. On February the 18th, 1878, ring allied men, including hired guns from the Jesse Evans gang, murdered Tunstall in cold blood, and that lit the fuse on what later became the Lincoln County War. Billy and a group calling themselves the Regulators fought back. Their commander was Dick Brewer, Tunstall's own foreman, and Billy served loyally under him. There were ambushes, shootouts, and a 5-day firefight right in the town of Lincoln that summer. One of the Regulators' early actions was the ambush that killed Sheriff William Brady, a Dolan ally who had helped orchestrate the legal harassment of Tunstall's operation. Brady's death is the murder charge that would later come back to haunt Billy specifically, because it was the indictment already on the books when the Amnesty arrived. That's when Governor Lew Wallace entered the picture. President Hayes appointed Wallace as territorial governor in September 1878, hoping he'd clean up the mess. Wallace was a celebrated Union general, but his real passion wasn't politics or peacekeeping. He was writing a novel. You might have heard of it, Ben-Hur. That's right, the man sent to bring law and order to New Mexico was more interested in finishing his book. So on November the 13th, 1878, Wallace issued an Amnesty Proclamation, pardoning everyone involved in the Lincoln County War since Tunstall's murder. Sounds fair, right? Except there was a catch. A deliberately crafted legal loophole. The amnesty excluded anyone who had already been indicted for a crime. And who was the one major participant already under indictment? Billy the Kid, indicted specifically for the death of Sheriff William Brady. The Ring's killer, the men who actually started the war by murdering Tunstall, the Dolan faction, the Jesse Evans gang, they walked free. Every single one of them. But the kid who fought back was now the only man in Lincoln County still carrying criminal liability. The amnesty wasn't about peace. It was a weapon, a legal weapon, aimed squarely at one teenager. Billy knew it. He wrote to Wallace directly. "I have no wish to fight anymore," he said. "Indeed, I have not raised an arm since your proclamation." He was practically begging for a fair shake. What happened next makes your blood boil. Wallace and Billy met secretly on March the 17th, 1879 in Lincoln. Wallace supposedly told the kid he would be scot-free with a pardon in your pocket for all your misdeeds. They even staged a fake arrest so Billy could testify before a grand jury without looking like a snitch. Billy held up his end. He testified, and his testimony helped law enforcement charge more than 50 men with murder and other crimes related to the Lincoln County War. 50. That's extraordinary. Then the system stabbed him in the back. The local district attorney, a ring man named Richardson, refused to honor any deal. Judge Bristol, also a ring ally, suppressed evidence and eyewitness testimony, securing acquittals for ring members. They were supposed to release Billy after that trial. They didn't. So Billy escaped from the Lincoln County Jail on June the 17th, 1879. And from that moment on, every newspaper story, every wanted poster, every tale of Billy the Kid, the cold-blooded killer, was amplified by the Ring and by Wallace himself to cover their own crimes. That myth about 21 kills, planted by Ring-friendly newspapers. The actual verified number historians agree on, Billy was solely responsible for 4 deaths, 2 of which were his jailers during his famous escape from custody. He may have participated alongside other men in 5 more group activities. That's it. 4 confirmed, and unlike Jesse James or Butch Cassidy, Billy never robbed a single bank, train, or stagecoach. When a Las Vegas, New Mexico newspaper asked Wallace about sparing Billy's life, the governor replied coldly, "I can't see how a fellow like him should expect any clemency from me." This from a man who had personally promised that clemency. Writer Michael Wallace put it plainly, "I don't think Lew Wallace gave a damn about Billy the Kid." Pat Garrett shot and killed Billy on July the 14th, 1881 in Fort Sumner. He was 21 years old. They buried him here alongside 2 of his closest companions, Charlie Baldry and Tom O'Fallard, both killed by Garrett in the months before. The headstone simply read, Powell's, which, given everything, is either touching or heartbreaking, depending on how you look at it. The whitewashing continued after his death. Garrett published a book the following year painting Billy as a monster, and the Ring's version of history became the accepted version over a century. But here's the thing about trying to erase someone from history. It almost never works. In 2003, New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson opened the question of a pardon. Descendants of Garrett and Wallace fought it tooth and nail. Wallace's descendant declared a pardon would declare Lew Wallace to have been dishonorable liar, which frankly the evidence strongly suggests he was. Richardson ultimately denied the pardon on his last day of office, December 31st, 2010, citing historical ambiguity. Defense attorney Randi McGinn, who filed the pardon petition, responded, "We won the battle, acknowledgement of Lew Wallace's broken promise, but we lost the war." She also said something that still hangs in the air. A promise is a promise and should be enforced. Perhaps a future New Mexico governor will grant justice for the kid. I couldn't say that like her because my voice is a little bit lower. As of mid-2026, no governor has. Even Billy's grave tells the story of a legend that refuses to die. His headstone has been stolen multiple times, once in 1950 by a man claiming to be Billy himself, and again in 1981 by a truck driver with the CB handle, you guessed it, Billy the Kid, who pried it loose with a crowbar and hauled it to California. The stone now sits inside an iron cage. The single authenticated photograph of Billy the Kid sold at auction for $2.3 million back in 2011. A second possible photo, bought for $2 at a Fresno junk shop, could be worth up to $5 million. The Santa Fe ring, they tried to turn Billy into a monster so nobody will listen to what he had to say. They nearly succeeded, but 145 years later, we're still talking about him, still asking the question that they didn't want to ask. Writer Dennis Chavez said it best. People saw him as a voice for the disfranchised. He was the Robin Hood of New Mexico. The secret law didn't erase Billy the Kid, it made him immortal. If this story grabbed you, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. I'm Mr. V, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Hidden Lens. We see things other people don't.